Thank you. Thank you, Madam Speaker. And it gives me a great deal of joy to have the opportunity to speak to Bill 78, the Group of 7 Day Act. And I thank the member for Durham for bringing it forward. I can think of no better tribute than marking the 7th day of the 7th month as a celebration of these 7 trailblazing artists. Ontario's arts and culture sector contributes to a strong, prosperous economy and creates vibrant communities. Our arts culture sector contributes to a strong, prosperous economy and creates vibrant communities. And our arts and culture sector pulls in about $28.5 billion annually and supports as many as 290,000 jobs. And our government knows that a thriving art sector enriches our lives, attracts investors, supports tourism and culture, and makes our communities attractive places to live, work, and visit. The Group of Seven's depictions of the uniquely beautiful Canadian landscape took the world by storm in the 1930s, and their work still draws great crowds to our museums today. Ontario's museums are key contributors to a strong cultural tourism sector and to the quality of our life for all Ontarians. And museums play a crucial role in our communities. They help us grow our economy, preserve our culture, and strengthen our pride and our place in Ontario. And Ontario museums generate more than $100 million in revenue and support almost 2,500 jobs. 15 galleries across Ontario showcase the Group of 7 paintings and keep the group's legacy alive. This includes the Art Gallery of Ontario, the McMichael Canadian Art Collection, both of which are right here in the Greater Toronto Area. One of them is in York Region, which isn't too far away from my backyard. And I'm proud to represent a riding that has deep historic connections with this group of brilliant Canadians. Thornhill's historic tourism sector has an entire section dedicated to the remembrance of the Group of 7, who are also known as the Algonquin Group. James Edward Hervey MacDonald, Arthur Lismer, Frederick Varley, Frank Johnson, and Franklin Carmichael met as employees of a Toronto-based design firm named GRIP Ltd. Quickly, they became more than co-workers and discovered their common artistic interests, eventually forming the Group of 7. Madam Speaker, I hope you brought your walking shoes because I want to take you on a walk through the streets of my riding, which serve as the home and inspiration for many of this group. Our tour begins on Centre Street, where we find the home of James Edward Hervey MacDonald. MacDonald was the founding member of the Group of 7. He immigrated to Canada from England in 1887, and in 1913 he purchased his home in Thornhill, and it quickly became a hub for visiting artists, as well as the birthplace of many iconic pieces of his work. It was in the backyard of this very house where he painted his most controversial painting, Tangled Garden. And I've sat in that garden when my son was just a baby. It's amazing. First exhibited in 1916, the artist was criticized for using such a large canvas for a mundane subject. One critic even compared the painting to a huge tomato salad. I believe, Madam Speaker, that there is so much beauty in being able to make something as mundane as flowers in his backyard into something breathtaking. Moving on, we're still walking down the street onto Yonge until we hit John, where we arrive at house number 14, which was rented by Frank Johnson in 1920. Although his association with the group was brief, he was known for his strong decorative interpretations of landscapes and his ability to complete work very quickly. In fact, he contributed a staggering 60 works to the Algoma Show in 1919 at the Art Gallery of Toronto, more than any other artist. And if we continue to walk along John Street, we arrive at the 1.5-story frame house where Arthur Lismer lived. Lismer met Johnson and MacDonald while working at a design and engraving firm and eventually moved to Thornhill himself. And as we stand in front of 22 John Street, we are standing before the birthplace of Lismer's painting, My Garden Thornhill, Afternoon Sunlight, Thornhill, Ontario, and John Street, Thornhill. It was at this very spot that inspired the creation of these masterpieces. And during his time here, Lismer was stirred by his surroundings and felt the urge to capture the beauty of this street, this garden, and this town. While he may no longer be with us, his talent allows us to see where we are standing through his eyes. There is still so much to discover on John Street. It's incredible to know that these brilliant minds walked this very path and found so much inspiration here. And now we're going to stop at a small cottage on the east side of Thornhill Cemetery. In 1915, Franklin Carmichael and his childhood sweetheart, Ada Went, moved to Thornhill and made this home their cottage. Carmichael was the youngest original member of the group of 7. However, the art he produced was certainly on par with that of his older friends in terms of his style and approach. Among other members, Carmichael stood out for reviving the neglected art of watercolor paintings to capture Ontario landscapes. And finally, let us stroll down to our last stop, the Pomona Mill House. Located right by Pomona Mills Park, it was home to Frederick Horseman Varley in 1912 for just a short time. A war artist, he painted scenes of battles and cemeteries that he witnessed in England and France, and he's best known for his illustrations of people. And this brings us to the end of our tour, Madam Speaker. I hope one day you'll have the opportunity to walk this tour in person, led annually by Thornhill's Historic Society. And there were 2 other members of the group of 7 that unfortunately did not join their colleagues in Thornhill. Lauren Stewart Harris, who was born in Brantford, Ontario, and was a key figure and the founding member of the Group of 7. And in 1911, he met MacDonald at the Arts and Letters Club of Toronto, and they became inseparable from that moment on. They went on sketching trips together and visited the exhibitions of contemporary Scandinavian art in Buffalo. At this exhibition, they realized they, too, could create landscape art that was distinctly Canadian and modern. Harris was also exploring different artistic styles. Early on, his work were full of rich and bright colors, and once he discovered Lake Superior, he adopted a more simplified and somber style. The Group of 7 began to take shape in 1913 when MacDonald and Harris invited an artist by the name of Alexander Young Jackson to Toronto. Jackson was born in Montreal, Quebec, and having studied in France, he brought with him a respected talent when he joined the rest of the group in Ontario. Similar to his colleague Varley, Jackson was also a war artist during the First World War. Every member of the Group of 7 played a critical role in ensuring the success and long-lasting impacts of the group's work. With the help of each member's distinct strength, the Group of 7 became responsible for Canada's first internationally recognized art movement. And rather than following other movements, they broke away from European tradition and embarked on a journey to do what had not been done before. These artists saw something in our vast nation that others did not. They looked upon our wilderness. They did not see only trees and lakes and mountains. They saw beyond the surface and were inspired by the soul of our landscape, which reflected in a strength, depth, and mysticism. I am immensely proud that my riding of Thornhill provided both a home and inspiration to these important figures in Canadian history. I hope that the educators in my riding and in Ontario can use the legislation of this day as part of their historic curriculum, taking students down the same journey that we all took today just before the end of the school year. Madam Speaker, my father used to say that we cannot move forward without looking behind us. And through difficult times, arts and culture has sustained us, not just physically like food or water, but through the nourishment of our spirit and mind. While the art industry suffered many hardships throughout the last few years, I'm proud to see so many recovered and operating back in the full swing of our province, and art challenges us in a way we see the world, and perhaps most importantly, it brings us together. The Group of 7's art revealed the beauty of Canada to people who had never stepped foot inside our country, showing the rest of the world what it means to be Canadian. Not only that, but they also brought Canadians together under a shared appreciation for the land we inhabit. Their work created a Canadian identity that united people across provinces and territories, And establishing the 7th day of the 7th month of every year as the Group of 7 Day will ensure signifies that our province is not lost but rather continues to be remembered and celebrated, and they will uphold that remembrance. I thank you for the opportunity to speak to this very important bill, and I look forward to celebrating July 7th as the Group of 7 Day with the rest of the province. Thank you.